This is a video that will go out of date pretty quickly, and it will either age really well or like crusty old milk. I'm genuinely fine with both, so let's do it. Pokémon Champions. It's gonna be out soon. Very decent chance we'll get the release date on Pokémon Day in less than 2 weeks time. And I've seen conversation ramp up a bit more around this game over the last couple of weeks or so, around what this game is gonna be exactly. And it dawned on me that there are people out there who think that Pokémon Champions is gonna be this tiny little side game that's not gonna mean too much. When, to me, from day one, from the day this game was announced, all signs have pointed very explicitly towards this game being the Pokémon VGC vehicle for the foreseeable future. We're talking for the next 10 years at the very minimum. So I just wanted to ramble for a few minutes about why that seems like the obvious situation to me, why I can't understand why anyone would assume anything different. So just to start with my own dumb anecdotes, I've said for years now that VGC needs its own game. Its own dedicated platform. It's a part of competitive Pokemon that is growing and growing, but while still sitting in this tiny niche submenu of each mainline Pokemon entry. It is shoehorned so clunkily into a game that it doesn't need to be, and it creates an unnecessary barrier of entry for people wanting to hop in and try competitive Pokemon battling. There is no official platform for you to dip your toes into PvP battling. If you want to do it, you have to play at least some way into the mainline games, then train your Pokemon up using the convoluted and really not beginner-friendly methods in those games. Then finally you can give it a go. Pokémon Champions will let you jump straight in, and everything is there. You can throw your Pokemon in from Pokemon Home, or you can recruit Pokemon directly within the game if you're not a mainline player. So many VGC players just play the first section of the game to unlock the trade function, and then get someone from their network of VGC players to trade them across the Pokemon they need for competitive. Pokémon Champions cuts out all the unnecessary legwork. It will just let you battle. The pinnacle of accessibility for VGC. And I think Pokemon knows this now. I think with the growth we've seen in VGC over the last few years in particular, they've sat down in a meeting room and said, right, yeah, we need to put this in a dedicated space now. That's the initial argument. VGC just needs its own platform. It shouldn't be something that's innately tethered to another game. It deserves to be its own game. And I think Pokemon is finally acting on that. And VGC doesn't look too good right now. If you watch an official tournament broadcast, you're watching two trainers battle it out on a random patch of grass with half a dozen NPCs dotted around the battlefield. That's kinda rubbish. It should be way bigger. Having its own live service game means that things can be implemented for specific events. Immediate example, the in-game arenas you're battling in. They could be easily modified to reflect the event, the colours and the decorations. The NPCs in the crowd could be wearing EUIC or NAIC or world-specific merchandise, holding up event-specific banners. I know this is all secondary to the actual action, but it's all fairly simple stuff that would add to the overall spectacle. Pokémon Champions for VGC also opens up so many more possibilities for formats and player choice. I'm just gonna say it. Pokémon Champions could be the answer to Dexit. Genuinely. This being a game that will be around for years and years to come, there's no reason why every single Pokemon wouldn't be available on here eventually. They could just keep throwing an extra 20 or 30 in here every few months. Totally doable. We reached the national dex before we knew it. And think about the possibilities that creates, where Pokemon has the full pool of Pokemon to craft its formats from, instead of just the Pokemon that are included in the most recent mainline games. Tagging on to that, we've seen the Omni Ring that's going to be included in Pokémon Champions. A ring that contains every battle gimmick Pokemon has introduced so far. We saw those gimmicks cross over in the very first trailer. Again, the format possibilities this opens up is incredible. You could flip between these gimmicks seamlessly from season to season, or as we just mentioned, have a combination of gimmicks available for a season. Maybe at one point it's Mega Evolution and Terastallization that's being used, and then they switch it up to Terastallization and Z moves. This is all so much better than being locked down in the way that we are currently. Why would they continue to use mainline games for VGC when something so inherently superior exists right here? I've heard a small number of people say that using this for VGC would hurt mainline game sales, that VGC is a marketing tool for mainline games. I can tell you comfortably right now that no one is buying mainline Pokemon games from watching competitive VGC. The mainline games are adventure games, and double battling is barely used in them as well. VGC is about the worst thing you could show people if you were trying to persuade them to buy the mainline games. Like I've mentioned, some people buy the mainline games just to play VGC, and you might ask from that, are Pokemon going to lose money from those people no longer buying those mainline games and using Champions instead? No, because if you're not spending $70 on the mainline game, you're going to spend at least $70 in Champions recruiting the new Pokemon, and doing their movesets, adjusting IVs and EVs. VP, or victory points, are the in-game currency here. It hasn't been confirmed yet that you'll just be able to outright buy VP in the game, but let's be honest, you'll 100% be able to buy VP in this game. Just like you can spend money on the in-game currency in every single other Pokemon live service game. Pokemon are only going to make more money from Champions existing, not less. And finally, and this is the most important point, the point that stands head and shoulders above everything else I've said in this video. You can literally disregard everything else I've said in this video if you want, because this is the real kicker. Pokemon has confirmed it themselves. If Pokémon Champions doesn't end up being the new sole vehicle for VGC, then Pokemon has lied on their own website. Because on the official Pokémon Champions webpage, it says the following. Starting in 2026, Pokémon Champions will be used as the VGC software for the Pokémon World Championships and for Championship Series events leading up to Worlds. Look at those first two words. Starting in. Not just for Worlds 2026, as I've seen multiple people falsely claim. Starting in 2026. So if it doesn't end up happening, if VGC pivots back to the mainline games in Gen 10, then Pokemon themselves have lied here. Or they've changed their minds, you obviously can't rule that out. But Pokemon themselves have said that Pokemon Champions will be the VGC software from 2026 onwards. That is what they have put into words on their own website. I don't understand how anyone can argue otherwise after reading that. It's why I'm getting kind of frustrated seeing so many people saying that this is just going to be another Pokemon Stadium spin-off. From Pokemon's own mouth, it is way more than that. It just makes sense as well, in every area. Even if Pokemon hadn't put that line on their website, not moving VGC over to Champions would be the biggest fumble Pokemon has ever made. With this game existing, it would be completely illogical to go back to pinging to a different game every 3 years for VGC, that has a limited Pokemon pool, limited mechanics pool, and has to have VGC baked into it as an add-on. Champions is going to cause an explosion in VGC player numbers. I'm going to get into VGC because of this game. I'll be playing from day one, because it's a dedicated space that I can hop into on my Switch or on my phone. That's huge in itself. You can hop on for a couple of battles while you're sitting on the bus. You can take it anywhere. It's joining the same ecosystem as the other competitive games. It's going to complete the tournament lineup. TCG, Pokemon Go, Pokemon Unite, Pokemon Champions. If I was to make a prediction, I'd say that mainline games going forward will still have PvP battles, but they won't have anything to do with VGC. They'll just be a separate thing in their own little bubble. And that makes infinitely more sense than it being the other way around and Pokemon Champions being the little bubble on the side. Like I said, I've brought forward some arguments here, but above anything I could say, Pokemon have confirmed themselves that Champions is the future of VGC. If it doesn't end up being that way, then something has drastically changed in their plans and they've done a U-turn on it. Or someone's going to get fired for writing this.